But let's take a look at quarterbacks that the Jets could potentially draft. Because right now, the NFL draft order, let's say season ended today. Right now, Jacksonville's got the number 1 overall, Las Vegas, number 2, Giants, number 3, all 2-10 teams. Jets right now, they're lined up for a top 6 pick. Keep losing, honestly. Keep losing. I don't even want to see them win. I don't care if they win. I don't care if they lose. I'd rather them lose. Get me a top 6 pick. Because right now, Cleveland and Tennessee both have 3-9 records, so they could always jump over us if we won one of those games. But I think the Jets will end up with a top 10 pick for sure. And I do think that they can get a top QB because there's a lot of good QBs. So let's take a look at some of the QBs that I think are a realistic option for the Jets to land. I do love Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. Obviously, I love Shedeur. Shedeur is probably my favorite. He's been the most consistent quarterback in college football this year. Jalen Milroe, I think, could also be an option. Carson Beck could be an option. I mean, those are good quarterbacks. Right now, ESPN currently has Cam Ward going number 1. They got Shedeur going number 2 out of the quarterbacks. Let's take a look at some others, though, because ESPN always – there's ESPN. But let's take a look at some of these guys. Carson Beck, I mean, he kind of regressed from 2023, but, he's still a good quarterback with Georgia. I would love to see him get an opportunity in an NFL team, but I would kind of shy away from him because I think the Georgia – I mean, they just got stud old linemen, and what do the Jets not have? They don't have stud old linemen. I like the idea of a Jalen Milroe, a guy who can move. He can really run. He can run. And we see it all the time now. Athletic QBs are the bread and butter of the NFL. Yes, a strong arm helps. Jalen Milroe does have a strong arm, one, and he can run. Look at all the quarterbacks. What do they all have in common that are great? Pat Mahomes, strong arm, he can move around. Josh Allen, strong arm, he can really move around. Lamar Jackson, great pass thrower, great arm, he can really move around. Baker Mayfield even, he can move around. He's got maybe not the strongest arm out of the other 3 guys I mentioned, but he can move around. He's got an arm. Even Trevor Lawrence, you want to bash Trevor Lawrence all you want. He's a 4,000-yard passer the past 2 years. I really hope he's okay. It does look like he's okay. He was able to walk off not walk off the field, but walk out of the stadium after that big hit, which is also not just on that defensive guy. I forgot his name off the top of my head, Aziz, of Houston. But at the same time, Trevor Lawrence can't be sliding like that. NFL has to have some serious discussions about the sliding rule for the quarterbacks. But Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he's got a strong arm. He can move around. You look at Brock Purdy, good arm. He can move around. I mean, you look over at Denver, Bo Nix, good arm. He can move around. Jaden Daniels with Washington, strong arm. He can move around. So I do really love the idea of drafting a guy like Jalen Milroe. I love the idea of drafting a guy like Jalen Milroe. And you can say all you want, Alabama quarterbacks. But Jalen Hurts, another guy. Speaking of Alabama quarterbacks, strong arm, he can move around. So CJ Stroud, strong arm, he can move around. And I hate when people say Alabama quarterbacks don't translate well. What about Jalen Hurts? What about Tua Tagovailoa? Mac Jones just a few years ago with the Patriots. He got to the playoffs. And he didn't look too bad with the Jaguars when he came in. Alabama quarterbacks, you say what you want about them. They can be good. They can be good. Jalen Milroe, 21 years old. This year he's got 15 passing touchdowns, 2,652 yards, only 10 interceptions, 7th in QBR rating this year with an 82.9. But when you really look at his numbers, what pops out to me is the rushing. I mean, this guy can move. Let's take a look at his rushing stats. This year, rushing the ball, he's got 719 rushing yards, 20 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 59.9 yards per game, rushing-wise. I mean, this is the guy I want. I want Jalen Milroe. I want to have some fun. I want to see what he can do with this offense. He can throw the ball down the field if he needs to. He can move around in the pocket. He's big. He's strong. I want Jalen Milroe. I want him. That's what I want. If we don't get Jalen Milroe, I would say Dylan Gabriel is another great option out of Oregon, 23 years old, only 5'11", 201. So he's not that tall, but we also see Baker Mayfield having having some success, and he's not that tall. Jalen Hurts, another guy. Bo Nix, he's not that tall. I think he's like 6'1", 6'2". Brock Purdy. But this year leads the NCAA in completions with 275 and completion percentage. Led it last year in 2023 with 69.3, 73.5 this year in 2024. 24 passing touchdowns this year, led the NCAA with 30 passing touchdowns last year. And he hasn't thrown more than 7 interceptions in a single college season. And what I do like about him is his age. He's 23 years old. We see it right now. Bo Nix, 24 years old. Stayed in college for a little bit, found success. So I would love Dillon Gabriel. I think he's going to be the steal. I think he could be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield when he was in college. Not so much playing, they do have some similar play styles, but just the completion percentage, the accuracy, not turning the ball over. I mean, he's a spitting image in my mind of Baker Mayfield. And say what you want about Baker when he's with the Browns, when he was with Carolina, but what is he doing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now? Took him to the playoffs last year, might take him to the playoffs again this year. So those are the two guys I would say the Jets have a realistic shot at getting and that they should get. Like I said before, Carson Beck, yes, good in college, but I don't think it's going to translate to the NFL. But then again, who am I? And then another guy you got to look at is Quinn Ewers of Texas, 21 years old. So he's still very young, 6'2", 209, a little bit bigger than a guy like Dillon Gabriel. This year, Quinn Ewers, 7 interceptions, 24 passing touchdowns, 2,307 yards, 71.4 QBR, which is 32nd in NCAA this year. But he's also a guy who can kind of move around a little bit, not too much. Not too much, but I mean, he can move around out of the pocket, but he's not going to break away like Jalen Milroe would. He actually has negative 35 rushing, but that's also because of some sacks and some bad plays overall. Like he's just not a good rusher. He's just not. That's not who he is. So Quinn Ewers, I would also stay away from. I would really go after Dillon Gabriel or Jalen Milroe from the Jets. I think they would be great fits for the Jets. But Jalen Milroe definitely my number 1, and my number 2 would be Dillon Gabriel.